All right, security is a strategy, not just a product. Pereira's getting arranged with the team up there. Quite simply, security has been said in every panel and in every spotlight since we started this thing on Monday. If we think about security as a SKU, it ain't happening. Nobody better to drive that conversation than this guy in our esteemed panel. Here's your clicker, sir. Thank you. And let's make sure, yeah, if it's red, make sure it's red, everybody. You have it red. Just grab the microphone next to you.
All right, you guys got me? Oh, we got me.
Yep, you got him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fireman.
All right. As Scott said, I think security's been in every conversation. So this is now the security conversation, but we've been having it all day, and I think if it sends anything, it means we need to be talking more security. So just like to start, number one, if each of you could just, we'll start with you, Jazz. If you could just get up, introduce yourself, you know, what your role is at Ariaka, maybe how long you've been there, and then we'll go to the next person.
Well, nice meeting you guys. My name is Jazz. I'm the security director for product management at Ariaka. I drive the entire security portfolio at Ariaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan Goldberger. I'm the SVP for the security practice and strategic sales. Joined TPX for one goal. Well, two goals. One, make a lot of money. Two, to enable TPX to sell as much security as possible. So great to be here. Really appreciate the time.
Ben?
So Ben Bowman, I am with Comcast Business and Masergy, the channel, I guess, director of engineering for Advanced Solutions.
Thanks, Ben. Jim?
Good morning, I'm Jim Garrity. I am the ISO and chief bottle washer for Entirety. I've been there just 60 days, so I'm relatively new to the organization. Thank you.
Awesome, welcome all of you. Ben, will you do me a favor, just stand up for a minute? Thank you. This is shameless, but it is what it is. My first introduction to security was a guy like Ben. I was 21 years old. I was going to a bar, and it was a guy like him standing at the front desk. That's what security used to look like, right? If you look across the rest of the panel, thank you, Ben.
I've done that, too.
That's fine. Ben, you can sit down now. If the rest of you would stand up, please. This is what security looks like today. Okay? Thank you. And yes, Ben is still can hold his own. He's kind of maintained his status over the years.
And I've done that type of security,
Yeah,
too.
you've done that too. That's his side job, see? If you're a little bit disruptive with the pool today, we're going to get Ben. He's going to show you old school security. This is new school security, all right? So thank you for the shameless plug, Ben. So, you know, we're going to start here. And is Amir in the room? I'm going to make sure he's in trouble. Is Amir here? I don't see him. Is Amir? Anyway. So Verizon puts out a report every year. It's called the DBIR. And the reason I was giving Amir a shameless plug is like he barely made it the last minute to come here. He didn't make the panel. He's from Verizon, but his slide did make the panel. They put out a report every year. They've been putting out for 15 years, and it's an annual data breach investigative report. And I was listening to Ali yesterday, and he says he does a lot of reading. And for those of you who want to kind of learn a little bit more, it's a good read. You know, I think Eric said his wife reads security stuff at night or something, which is a little weird. But nonetheless, you know, I think it's a good read for you guys. It really is to kind of educate, you know, security practitioners to get data-driven worldview, common pitfalls in regards to cybercrime. The hope is to encourage executives to support security efforts, right? To help them fund their security initiatives. And many of these statistics you guys have probably heard before, but you know, especially if you spend any time with Eric or John on calls, he throws these out all the time, right? And I think the reason they're important is because part of it is the why, right? So like, why have we been talking about security all week? Because quite frankly, it's, you know, it's everywhere, and it's risky, and it's risk to the business. So if you look at these statistics up here, you'll see that 82% of most breaches involve the human element, right? So, you know, we had a little experiment the other day. I don't know, some subset of you guys clicked on the AT&T thing, and you know, you guys are phished. And you know, really, when you think about like securing what human behavior is, that's a very difficult thing, right? There's no consistency across it. You know, social engineering was impacted 20% of those breaches. You know, once again, a human element. How am I going to leverage social engineering to get you to click on something I don't want you to? And then 2/3 of all breaches involve phishing, you know, stolen credentials, and ransomware. Now, you know, those types of breaches, when you talk about, even if you had multi-factor authentication, that can be breached as well, right? So like, you think you put these, you know, parameters in place, and they're not necessarily going to save you. So having a multi-pronged approach is very helpful. And then, 62% partners accounted for 60% of the system of intrusion incidents. And what does that mean, right? It's your supply chain. So we're talking to customers today about their suppliers, and they're putting demands on their suppliers, and they're saying, tell me about your security program. I can't continue to do business with you if you don't tell me that you have a mature security profile, right? So supply chain is a huge issue. So a lot of times when you're talking to customers, it's not just about their business, it's about the demands their customers are putting on them. And just for the record, we are in the same boat. We have this incredible equity partner, and Charles Bank is putting demands on us from a security perspective, which is good because we should always be maturing, moving up the stack of our security profile. When you look at this slide, there are 1,200 cybersecurity vendors in the market. Of them, they have about 3 products each, and there's 3,600 security products in the market. According to Security Magazine, 78% of organizations use more than 50 discrete solutions, and 37% use more than 100. So when you look at this and you say, how the hell am I supposed to manage that, right? That is a mess. So when you think about security as a product, it's not a product. There's 3,600 products you can buy, but quite frankly, that's a mess, right? It has to be a holistic strategy. And really, that's kind of the whole purpose of what we're going to talk about today. It's not about this product or that product. It's about a constant approach to improvement in maturing your own security profile and having a strategy around it. So with that said, did I go the right way? Hopefully I went the right way. I think I did. I'm going to give a little pitch to a couple people on my team real fast. The people that probably should be hosting this is Eric, Nooch, and Saad. They're better than me, right? Maybe I'm a better talking head, I'm not sure. But, Nooch had said, if you look at strategy like a chess game, right? And, you look at the people out there that are trying to hack you, they get to play with all the pieces on the board. You know why? Because that it's freeware. Like, they get all that stuff on the internet, they use it for free to kind of hack, but you go talk to your CFO and say, hey, I need this much money for some products around security, and you get a limited amount of products. So think about chess. I'm playing a chess game with someone who has all the pieces, and I have to choose whether I'm using the rooks and the knights or the pawns and the queen, because I have a limited budget, right? It's an unfair game, but it's a game that you have to play. So it's not a choice. So there's a big strategy to security. With that said, we'll start with you, Jim. How important is it for a customer to have a strategy around security, and how do you recommend approaching that strategy with customers? How do you talk about it?
Well, I think that with regards to, it's important to have a strategy, certainly. And I almost rewind away from a security strategy. I start with a business strategy. So on the business side, I look at, all right, we're trying to, increase our market penetration by X, and we're trying to generate a bunch of additional revenue when we do that, and we're trying to improve customer satisfaction. And then you look around and you start to say, all right, what could potentially negatively impact our ability to hit those goals? And certainly a security event where I have exfiltration of data, I have a ransomware event where I'm offline or I'm down. Not only the impact to the business, but also the impact to the reputation is significant. And so if I start on the business strategy side, and I look at both the positive of having security aligned with my go-to-market and my products and things like that, but then I look at the downside effect. There's no doubt that every company should be looking at security first and foremost. To your point about what is the approach, there's a lot of strategy approaches, but let's start in a very simple way, right? We want to inspect what we expect. And so, we want to monitor, we want to manage, we want to audit, we want to, evaluate risk. We go from there, we start looking at continuity, and then we look at compliance. And again, compliance is sort of keeping us honest around all those other pieces and making sure that we're doing the right things by customers and data and protection of information. And so that's how I would look at the, from a strategy perspective. And I look at the ISO as, the entity or the function that is supposed to make sure that you're certainly aware of all the technical pieces that you need to be aware of, but you're also business focused so that you can drive those initiatives together and do it in a very cost-effective way.
Thanks, Jim. I think what's great about the conversation is that aligning the security strategy with the business strategy, right? Because every customer's security risk may be different based on where their intellectual property is, right? Where is the biggest risk in their business, right? So understanding where the biggest risk is may help you decide where am I going to invest my money. Jazz, this question's for you. So, we've known Ariaka for a very long time, kind of as, I'm going to put a label and call it WAN optimization as a service, right? It's kind of been a trend what you guys done for a very long time. You're the director of product management. You own product direction for the company. And you're layering on security and SD-WAN. How do you see your product direction in line with what customers' security strategies are, based on the market today?
Yes, thank you. So Ariaka is a WAN optimization vendor. So we sit at the network layer. So we monitor customers' application traffic. We optimize your SASE traffic. It makes perfect sense for us to extend our offer into network security and cloud security. So the market right now is going through digital transformation, which is really disrupting the traditional infrastructure. Three things are happening right now really force everybody to look at security differently. The first thing is that application workload shift. Every day we see more and more application workload lift and shift from traditional data center into the cloud. The second thing is a workforce shift. Pandemic changed how we work and live our life. Your employee, your user is no longer behind your branch office. They are literally working from home or working anywhere. Now you have your employee everywhere, your application data everywhere. The third thing happening right now is customer expectation change because of the traditional point solution no longer meet the expectation because the complexity is just too high. So each security solution, we have to take this into account in order to be effective, in order to stay relevant. So Ariaka's approach here is that we really want to offer customers the single pane glass SASE solution, right? SASE, I'm sure that you guys familiar with this term. It's front and center in all the article right now, in the market right now. SASE is a secure access service edge. So there are 5-6 different pillars, right? So the first one is the SD-WAN, right? Ariaka is front and center, is a leader in this market. The second thing is remote access. We rolled out a remote access solution last year, right? That's the second pillar of the solution. Third pillar is SWG, Secure Web Gateway, which is the web gateway sitting between your user and internet to protect your your network from the threat coming from internet, right? So we're in the early access program right now. We offer early access to our Lighthouse account. Next month, we will have a control availability. December, we'll have a general availability for SWG. The fourth pillar is the NG firewall. Our engineers are writing the code right now, so you guys have first-hand information. So we are going to roll out an NG firewall solution next year, right? And the last pillars of the solution is CASB and DOP. Today, we already optimize your SASE traffic, right? And we already have that full visibility. We are going to add a policy layer, so allow you to make a policy control around the SASE and SaaS application and also data loss protection aspect, right? Zero Trust is also the very important aspect, right? Zero Trust is a framework. So Zero Trust is basically follow the least privilege principle. Any software and application or user should only given the least amount of privilege for them to finish their job, nothing more. All the security solution will lay on top will follow that principle. So these are pretty much our security strategy and directions. Yeah, that we're gonna help our customer to address the solution.
Thank you, Jess. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit with you guys, and I'm gonna ask you a question here, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm a huge basketball fan. Yeah, I coach my kids' basketball team. I think Scott and Brian both give me a lot of tips about how to do that. But I think strategy has a lot to do with the players, right? So when I look at my basketball team, I look at the players I have. right? If I have bigs, we're going to pound down low. If I have speed, we're going to run the court, right? If I get shooters, we're going to bang the three. Strategy, I have a seasonal strategy. Here's what my strategy is with the players I have. A lot of times I go into a game and based on who I'm playing, here's the strategy for this game. I might have a strategy for a single play to win a game, right? So to me, strategy, it's kind of a little bit of a moving target, but it also has to do with the players that you have, right? So, I think, Jonathan, when you think about like working with customers that you've dealt with, how do you like assess the team and the players and the people on board they have, and kind of how does that change maybe the strategy you might recommend for them to have? And I'm curious too, like, how does it change maybe your approach to what you think would be valuable to them?
Yeah, I'm going to stand just because I don't know if everybody will be able to see me if I stay seated. So, we'll let it just wash over,
It's
right?
fine. If you go too long, we're going to push you off the front, but
There
it's
you
okay.
go. That works too. So it does start with the people, because when we talk about security maturity, which you all discussed so well earlier, if an organization has a very immature security environment, they have a CIO, maybe they've got a VP of IT, the security guy is the person who's jailbreak their iPhone, like that's their security dude. That they're not going to have this capability to deploy that other slide you showed of 30 different security products. So it starts with really judging the organization from the people they have. If they don't have that security expertise, then it's about being foundational. It's about getting defensible for that organization based on what they do. If they don't have compliance requirements because they're a small organization, then it's about what are the fundamental things you need to do to protect yourself from ransomware, to protect yourself from having all your users clicking on the phishing email and losing corporate credentials. It starts with the people. And from the maturity of the people, you then build the program that's appropriate for that organization. Now, every organization, regardless of sector, size, security maturity, compliance requirements, they have fundamental security needs they need to implement. You got to have a secure perimeter. You got to have a secure endpoint environment. As an outcome, you got to have that secure endpoint environment. It was mentioned earlier about restoration and the importance of having a secure backup solution, a solution that can restore so that you're not, if you have something bad happening, you're not talking about early retirement. These fundamentals, that's what an organization does, because to your point of your basketball players, regardless if you got threes that are just draining left and right, if you got speed or you just got bigs, you got to play defense. You got to play defense. And a fundamental defense is going to be based on how intelligent, how capable are your players to play that defense, whether you do zone, whether you go man-to-man. But you're going to have that foundation. You got to know what your players are before you implement that foundation.
Thank you, Jonathan. Staying with the theme of players, Ben, one of the services I find that people have a gap on is maybe a SOC. And so it's like, hey, I have players, here's what they do, but like, are they the right players? I'd love to kind of have you talk about the importance of having a SOC, or at least SOC as a service, and then what you see is that team or that group's approach, like what's their job and responsibilities, and how often do you see, and how do you kind of go into a customer and assess, do they have the capabilities they're doing on their own, or how do you kind of help them realize they don't? Maybe is a better way of thinking about it.
So, and first I want to start off by I want to talk.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Can you hear him?
I'm cursed with the mic today. It's me.
It's the beard.
It's in the way. We talk under it.
It's a muffler.
Sorry. So I always have partners ask me, like, how do you start the security conversation, or what is it, or what should I do, what should I focus on? And the best advice I can give, and this is a theme, is be a business expert more than a security expert, right? And I think we're all talking about that, right, is we need to have business conversations. So starting there. Now, when it comes to SOC, security is a 24/7 job, right? Like, just flat out, you can't just, it's not 8 to 5. The people in Romania aren't attacking during lunch or like at 2 in the afternoon. They're attacking at 2:30 in the morning or early, okay? So the second thing I like to point out is there are 3 million open security positions right now. Like, think about that. There's 3 million open jobs. So there's a need for a SOC. There's a need for this 24/7 monitoring, and the security teams, IT teams can't keep up with it. If you take Target, for example, Target had purchased the security software that would have prevented the attack from happening. They just didn't have the manpower to implement it, right? And so that's very crucial. The next thing to think about too is during a ransomware attack, a machine is either deleted or encrypted every 20 seconds. And we're painting the picture of why is the SOC so important, right? You can't sit there and wait until 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. when everyone gets in and realizes there's an attack. There's always that question. It's like, okay, well, you have people like who are focused on security, but who's watching it at 2:30 a.m., right? Like that. So the SOC is crucial. And the way I really like to paint a visual picture of a SOC is an air traffic control tower. You can have all that technology watching planes come in, flight patterns and everything, but if you don't have someone up there controlling that and having that conversation and guiding people, it's gonna be chaos in the air. It's the exact same thing, right, with your network. You can purchase all the technology in the world that's gonna throw a bunch of useless alerts at you. But if you don't have someone watching it 24/7, looking at it 24/7, it's gonna be chaos in the network. So, and then the other thing I like to point out when you talk about what is the purpose of a SOC, and I think it's always missed, you talk about EDR, endpoint detect and response, and MDR, managed detect and response. That R, right, the response or the remediation. Is that SOC just going to take an error and say, hey, you've got a problem? Or are they actually going to jump in, get their hands dirty, and remediate the problem and stop it from happening to prevent it from going into a disaster recovery? I mean, disaster recovery is needed, but that's not where you want to be, right? Like, you want to prevent it being disaster recovery. There's going to be recovery, but disaster recovery you want to prevent. And so I think that remediation is key.
Yeah, thank you. What's an interesting thing to point out too, I'll tie it back to basketball, is you can have a SOC and you can have people, right? But do you have a plan? Do you have an incident response plan? Have you sat down and documented, if this happens, this is what we're going to do, and here's what I'm responsible for, and here's what my partner's responsible for. Eric calls it, responsibility matrix. So I look at, like, I go into a basketball game, it's like, oh shit, they're pressing. We didn't practice a press break. What do you do now? Call a timeout, 30 minutes, teach a press break? That ain't gonna happen, right? So you gotta have a plan, right? So it's not a matter of like, if it's gonna happen, it's when it's gonna happen and how quick can you detect it, how quick can you respond, right? So let's move on to cybersecurity maturity. So Business Wire reported just over a month ago on cybersecurity maturity of enterprises. Security maturity is typically graded on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest score. The report showed few critical findings. The couple I found interesting are bigger companies are not necessarily better. Quite frankly, and I think, I'm trying to remember who was on the panel that said it, they might be worse in some cases, right? And I think you can understand why they might be, is it's harder to be better the bigger you grow, the faster you grow, right? So that's one thing I found interesting. There's a lot of opportunities in really big companies that may actually have a lot of people, but they're just not necessarily better at things, right? And overall, maturity of companies is extremely low. So with 84% of companies at level 1 or 2 on the very bottom of the range, there's a lot of room for improvement. And this is a constant improvement cycle. So I'm going to share a slide with you guys. It's a chart put together by Entirety, and it's a cybersecurity maturity profile, right? And we use it every day, right? And God bless you guys for putting it together. It's a way to kind of talk to your customers about where they stand. It's a very, it doesn't put them on the defense to say, where are you on your maturity level? Let me share this with you. You tell me what you think. Like, it's a very, it kind of doesn't put them in alarm. So, Jim, let me just say, like I said, love the slide. Love to start with you. How do you define security maturity kind of for the audience? Like, what would be the parameters of like security maturity, right? And then this is your guys' prop. So how do you use it for conversations to get people talking about where they land?
Well, I think when I look at this chart, and this kind of plays into other things you see throughout the industry, one of the things I look at is on the left-hand side, we're very reactive. You're picking up issues, you're picking up events and other things, as they're happening or after they're happening. And to your point on the basketball side, without an incident response plan, without a race EVS of who's doing what and when and how and who's accountable. It's that's really what the left-hand side of this chart is all about. And on the right-hand side of this chart is we're fully evolved. We have the right processes and procedures. We have the right folks that are accountable for different things. We have good orchestration within the organization to be able to handle certain incidents and events automatically or automagically. And so, what we're trying to do along the way is trying to evolve companies that may have, like back to your first slide, a tremendous amount of tools, but may not know how to use them or know how to use them in the right way. And I think throughout all of this, it comes back into the security organization, the ISO, or some sort of outsourced individual or service that can help you along the way. I would say that as it relates to level one. So most people don't know I'm actually an instructor, an adjunct at the college level, and so I always take my two fall teams, and I have them. The first team, I say, okay, we're going to install EDR and XDR into the environment. We're going to have a SIM. We're going to give you all these other tools, vulnerability and pen test tools, and all these other great things. And then what I'll do is I'll laterally move across the environment, hack the environment, ransom the environment, and the students are like, how the heck did that happen? We had all these tools, and we still got hacked, and now we're totally out of commission. And that's a good example of what level one is all about. Is having the tools, and remember, IT people, they're going to gravitate to tools because that's what they can execute on, but it's then the strategy around, like as an example, lateral movement. How do you prevent a lateral movement? Well, there's process that has to be put in place, and there's technology, and there's you mentioned earlier about zero trust and separation of duties. What a super important concept. And so as you start to create those plans and services, now you go from level one to level two. And then as we, then further define what's going on and then begin to orchestrate or begin to audit, and that's how we start to move up and down the chain. And so your second question around, how do we talk to, our customers and the market about this, it's in very much the same way, is to show that all the tools and services by themselves get you nothing. Without the strategy, you're in big trouble, and some of that is just having people around you. The last point I'll make, and I know I'm way over all my time, is that everyone needs an advisor, right? So I'm an ISO. I've been doing security for 20 years, and I have advisors all the time. You mentioned in coaching, you have advisors. It is a critically important piece to everything you do. My advice is whether you're an ISO or you have a security organization or not, get advisors around you that can further solidify the program that you're trying to build. Thank you.
Hey, great advice. Jonathan, let's go to you. Kind of the same question, right? We talked a little bit about the people. What are the kind of the things that help you determine how mature is this company in their security endeavors, and where along that maturity level is a good target for you guys?
Yeah, so we at TPX started with just a blanket conversation. Customer empathy is one of the most important things that is missing from the sales process. And so we start that conversation and say, if there's a CISO or a CIO that we're talking with, we say, what are your key objectives this year? Big picture. What are your key objectives? If they don't have a CIO, or I should say if we're not talking to the CIO, then we'll do something different. We'll say, tell us about your security fabric. And we have a framework that is empty, a customer framework that is a PowerPoint slide that is empty, similar to that slide that had 40,000 vendors on it. And those gaps, that empty slide, we fill in with the customer. So that in that very first discovery conversation, we identify what their security fabric is by them telling us. And we capture it on a document that they then can use. They can use to both see where their gaps are from a foundational security perspective, from a governance perspective, from a compliance perspective, as well as being defensible to their CIO. Because now they have a document that shows this is where they are and could alter or influence the objectives for the CIO. But it starts with a conversation. It starts with listening versus, let me tell you about all the stuff that we've got at TPX.
Thank you, Jonathan. You know, when we use this in our conversations, it's all about time, right? That's how I look at it. It's time. And we'll pull this chart up and we ask people, you know, how long will it take for you to detect something? When you had an incident, how long did it take till you realize that you had it, right? How long did it take for you to respond? How long did it take for you to recover? And a lot of times you just put it up on the screen and just, you're like, hey, where do you stand? They kind of look at the criteria and they're like, we're probably between a 1 and 2. And it's like, well, why do you say that's where you are, right? And they'll kind of tell you, well, you know, maybe we had an incident and we figured it out in 4 hours, but it took us a day to kind of really purge it, and we lost 3 days of data. Like, how much data are you going to lose? How far can you recover? And then you could ask someone, like, where do you want to be? Like, do you have partners or suppliers or, you know, that are requiring you to be in a certain place? So, like, when I think about maturity a little bit, I think about it like, how quick, what is your speed to do something, right? How quick can you detect? How quick can you respond? How quick can you recover, right? It's a speed thing, right? And how quick you can do something is the difference of your business being out of business or not, right? So just think about it that way, and it's an easy conversation to have. So Jazz, we're going to stay on the topic a little bit of, you know, we'll call it, you know, company's maturity, right? I've heard customers tell me, oh, we spend this percentage of our budget on security. It's like, oh, that's one way of thinking about, like, you're secure, I spend this much money. Or we have 75 different products and 15 different people, and you know, we're 4.5 on the maturity level because we spend this much money with this many people, right? From an Ariaka perspective, you know, how does that sound to you and the way you guys look at how you approach security?
Yeah, so I assume that you mean that you spend percentage number of money on the best breed of solutions, right? So best breed solution makes sense if you only have a 1 or 2 area of concern you need to address. I'm so glad I might share that slides earlier. That's a very famous slide I Gartner put together. It just shows you how fragmented the security market is. So Mike also kind of share with some stats. I kind of want to record the stats again, right? So in average, that the number of networking vendors organization have to deal with is between 5 to 7. It's reasonable, right? But the number of security tools each organization must manage is grow from 67 to 76 in the past 2 years during the pandemic. 76, that number, that alone is a security issue. There's no way people can keep up, manage that many security tools, okay? So the complexity of today's IT environment is very, very high. The rule of thumb is that organizations should always look at all areas of concerns and try to consolidate and try to converge to simplify, right? That's the number one thing. The second thing I think each organization should ask themselves is that how much percentage of the feature of the best breed solution feature you actually need. I was in one of the main networking vendors, and I was a PM for one of the major firewall platform. In average, it's less than 10% of the feature that customers are actually using. So the organization should ask themselves, are they okay to pay for the premium price for that less than 10% of the feature you are actually using today? So this is a 2 very critical area that I think you need to consider. So what Ariaka's approach is that we really want to help to reduce the number of vendor a solution customer need to manage. So follow that SASE strategy and direction, right? So we want to consolidate SD-WAN, right? Your remote access solution, SWG, right? And NG firewall, CASB, all together. So everything will be seamlessly working together, right? We'll give you the single pane glasses solution, right? From management plane, control plane, it's all one single portal. And from data plane perspective, we'll not just give you a single management plan, right? From data plane perspective, we're gonna give you much, much better performance. Why? So if you look at today's traffic, almost 80%, 90% of traffic are encrypted traffic, HTTPS. Not just the SaaS traffic, not just internet traffic, even the self-host, homegrown application is also HTTPS based. So networking vendors intercept your traffic, encrypt, decrypt again, then encrypt again. And all the single security vendor also do the same thing. Your traffic is bouncing back and forth from your data center to the cloud between vendors to being encrypted, decrypted multiple times. So our vision is we're going to give you a single pass architecture. We'll intercept your traffic once. We need to do that from a networking perspective to optimize your traffic. On top of that, we add all the security services on top. So that will give you the best performance result. Security vendor, a lot of security vendor is already talking about single pass architecture like Zscaler, but they don't own the network. So the traffic is still bouncing back between the network and the security. So our vision here is we want to simplify all that. We want to reduce the number of vendors you have to deal with, and we want to give you a single pass architecture to give you the best performance.
Thank you, Jazz. I want to shift over to Ben, and we're going to talk a little bit about cyber insurance, right? I think we heard Eric talk a little bit about it earlier. You know, cyber insurance premiums rose to an all-time high at the end of 2021 with 92% year-over-year increase. They've since stabilized a little bit, but another high-profile attack could immediately, right, change that profile. It immediately could change the cost. Can you educate a little bit about cyber insurance and how that plays into, you know, your approach to customers? You know, what are the gaps that, you know, they're seeing? Love to hear a little bit about like attestation, self-attestation. Yeah, just, you know, what would you tell your customers to be aware of, like, that they may not be aware of is in those policies?
Right. So I think cyber insurance is kind of a double-edged sword where there's a positive side of it, but there's also this very dark side to cyber insurance, right? And I think one of the things when you talk about cyber insurance, the requirements of like what you have to do to get cyber insurance, to even qualify for cyber insurance, right? And one of those things is like EDR and having visibility. We talk about visibility like a SOC and visibility watching your environment, right? And I think that it's good to have that visibility, but then just kind of regrouping my thought here with cyber insurance, I'm not a big fan. I guess that's why that's why I'm struggling with it. I'm trying to be like polite with it, but I'm just not a big fan because by the time you end up doing all the things that you have to do to qualify for cyber insurance, the chances of you being attacked in a way that's you're going to need it is very slim. Right? I mean, the restrictions and everything that you have to do is so much that you don't even need cyber insurance at that point. And that would be what I'd say about that.
I mean, I'll say it this way, right? I think the message is that there are probably partners that are going to require you to have it. Yeah. You know, customers are going to require you to have it. And I think the message you're trying to get across is like, you better know what it says in that policy because there's requirements in there that you need to meet for them to pay. So you're like, oh yeah, you know, the CFO bought cybersecurity insurance, didn't bother talking to the CISO who's running security. They have no idea what's in the policy. There's no requirements. They haven't done anything about it. And it's like, wow, we had an event and they go to get paid and they're like, wow, we've been paying all this money and now we're not going to collect any money, right? Because we didn't meet the requirements in the policy. You know, the other piece of it too, and this is the attestation side, is right. That you know, you may commit that yes, we have these things. Yes, we can respond in this time. Well, just understand, like, if you have an incident and you didn't meet those commitments, you don't get paid, right? So there's a lot of risk. So I get it.
But with attestation, you know, I think there's a conflict of interest with a lot of this stuff. And I'd say there's a conflict of interest with even cyber insurance. And when you're talking about attestation, there's a conflict of interest with that. And whenever there's a conflict of interest at times, there's also vulnerabilities, right? There's risk that goes along with that. So if you're doing your own, what you call it self-attestation, yep. Then there's a conflict of interest because you're trying to paint a picture that might not be accurate, right? If a cyber insurance company is doing your attestation or they're doing anything regarding your security, there's a conflict of interest of them being even involved in what the decisions you're making from a security standpoint. So.
Yeah, and the other conflict of interest too is a lot of times, you know, the cyber insurance company is the one that's also trying to sell you the things that you need to to comply, right? And you're like, well, you know, this is the fox guarding the hen house. It's a little crazy, right? So like, good, easy topic to talk about with people. We're running out a little bit of time. I want to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, but we'll go to you, to you, Jazz, next. Just real quick though, you guys have a, you know, call it OpEx versus CapEx model, right? A lot of people buy firewalls, they CapEx it. help us understand your thoughts and maybe like the benefit of an OpEx model in the market of security versus people investing in hardware and security models on a CapEx basis.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I like that. I think Jim mentioned that, Brent mentioned that earlier. So security is a journey, right? It's 24/7 job. So it's not, select the right solution is important, but how to manage it, right? Security is never set it and forget it. I know that a lot of vendors mentioned about set it and forget it, but security is never that. So you need to manage your solution. You need to make sure that your security policy is up to date. So it is important that, so I always tell my customers that no one better than Ariaka know how to configure our solution, how to configure our firewall policy. Firewall policy management alone is a market out there, right? So the misconfiguration rate go up to 20% during the pandemic. I was just chatting with Eric earlier, right? It's because everybody is trying to struggling to change the policy. So that's why we firmly believe that in order to help our customers to address the security challenge they are facing right now, not just offer them a solution. Our solution is always fully managed. So we firmly believe that, so we will take just see us as your extended team member. We will take your security policy, turn that into our firewall configuration, turn that into our SWG configuration. You shouldn't spend time, right, to focus on the configuration. Like earlier we mentioned about the security staffing shortage is a real problem, right? So there are a lot of security positions need to be filled. You should focus on the SOC, right? Security operational, and then do the threat hunting. They ask to worry about the configuration, manage your solution. So I think not just CapEx, OpEx is also need to be addressed for the entire security journey.
Thank you. We'll go to you, Jim. What's the low-hanging fruit? Where's the common gaps you're finding, right? When you're talking to a bunch of organizations, you guys do it all the time. Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where's the easy places that we can sell?
Yeah, I think that it's that managed security operations center piece is really important. If you think about the analysts that you need and the threat hunters and the investigators and all the different pieces, vulnerability and pen folks that go into a security practice, it's hard to build that in any organization where security is not core to their business. So I always say insource what is core and outsource what is context. You'll save way more money by doing that. And I think that not only for entirety but for I'm sure a lot of organizations that are out here, that managed security operations center service, the SIM service, the virtual CISO service, those are all areas that we can help your customers and your customers' customers get a leg up in a fairly inexpensive way.
Thank you. And Jonathan, we'll go to you next. I know you're extremely passionate about what you do. I think it comes across on stage. If there was one product to TPX to sell, what product would that be for you guys?
It's actually not necessarily a technology. It's how do we stop you and me from being stupid? Because that's the biggest problem we've got. We got stupid happening every day. And so there are two different solutions that I think everybody should have and that they're not doing today. One is everybody's got security awareness training, but it's just checking the box. Your kids go to school how many days a year? A lot. Not enough. Yeah, I'd want them to go more, exactly. That's all year. But the reason is because they don't remember anything from one day. And yet, security awareness training, we take a 30-minute video once a year, and now, hey, I'm all security smart. No. So it's continuous security awareness training. That's managed by TPX. So the customer doesn't even have to worry about it. Because that's the thing. They've got to worry about running their business. They've got to worry about do I worry about security awareness training or do I worry about that system down? Yeah, I'm going to go after that system down. So security awareness training, and then the second is that IDR piece. And empower your users to be smarter, to protect your entire organization by taking a phished email or an email that looks, strange, submitting it, and removing it from everybody's inbox in the enterprise. One person, clicking once, makes everyone more secure, not insecure. And that's the way we do it today.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ben, we're going to let you get the last word, right? This is probably one of my very favorite movies when I think about security. I think there's the offensive strategy and there's a defensive strategy. And the moment in the movie, I thought to myself, tell us, Ben, how do you make it rain, right? Where's the money? How do these guys make it rain? We've talked about all the budgets are here in security. Where is it, right?
So this is the beauty of the security conversation is it touches every single aspect of a technological ecosystem, right? You can't have a cloud conversation, voice and collaboration conversation, network conversation, application conversation without talking about security. And so what security is now allowing you to do is open doors and expand conversations. Now, when we're having these conversations, there's really two things to think about, and I think it's with any sales conversation that we have. It's opening a door with a good question, and then it's overcoming an objection that they don't want to talk about. And I think security, that's one of the hardest things to do is you go in and you say, what are you guys doing for security? Oh, our IT team handles it. Or are you worried about a ransomware attack, right? And they say, no, we've got virus protection. So, and now I'm going to give one key, I'm going to tie in a story with virus protection. So virus protection is signature based. EDR is behavioral based, right? And sometimes it's like, well, what's the difference with that? So how many people have had a credit card that's been blocked because suddenly you get a notification, hey, someone's using your card, or you try to use your card, and right? Everyone? Yeah, pretty much all of us, right? So here's a story that's going to help you remember this. So about 3 years ago, I had a What Happens in Vegas, Stays in Vegas weekend. So I'm from Vegas. Let's just say I had a lot of fun. I went to a lot of places, spent a lot of money on my credit card, and it didn't block. I didn't have a problem with that. That's where everyone's thinking that went wrong. A week after that, I had to buy my mom a gift. So I went to a Christian bookstore, swipe the card, it declines, and I get an immediate call saying that there was a transaction trying to be had that was outside my profile, right? So I had to look at my life. I didn't change my life, but I looked at it at that time. But anyhow, hopefully that'll help you remember that.
It passed the crazy horse.
Yeah, exactly.
No problem,
exactly.
right? You're good
not
there.
a problem at all.
Right?
But no, a Christian book for my mom. It's like the feds come in. Who is this guy?
I love it.
Anyhow.
I love it. Couple questions. We got couple. We take a couple questions. Kinka, are we good? All right. Saad.
What was the first question?
That's it. He's been teeing him up, right?
Planting him.
Yeah, he's
Planting
planting him right there.
No, there's an incentive plan on questions, so Scott, I won't keep you up. Guys, thank you. I'm already getting a bunch of people asking, when can we get the slides? Can you get more about this panel? One question, security seems to be changing 24/7. How often should they be doing penetration tests, gap analysis, that kind of stuff? And that should be, we had a CIO, $100,000 a month network. Hey, how about security? I got a firewall. That was 2 years ago. That gentleman is no longer the CIO because they got ransomware attack. And this is real. How often should they be doing an assessment? And what is the easy button to get them to do an assessment, for us to sell them the assessment so we can get Eric in front of them to do a security assessment and sell them everything that they're spending money on?
I think it's a good question. I'll break it up into a couple of parts. I think as it relates to the vulnerability scanning as an example, I would do that every week, right? Have that an automated process running behind the scenes as part of a service that runs every single week and is looking at those delta changes within an environment that could give a CISO or a CIO some visibility into what's going on. I think that's really impactful. On the penetration test side, I would say it's probably more of a quarterly thing, but I would be assessing quarterly as well. Like the landscape is changing so much, I wouldn't wait for yearly assessments. I think quarterly assessments of what's going on is important, and then having one larger roll-up is key.
Yeah, any other comments?
Well, I was just going to say, I agree. Vulnerability scans is actually where that's at. So if you take pen testing and you do a pen test, that is a snapshot, and that's all that pen test is good for. Because within 10 seconds, your whole security environment has just changed within an environment, right? So that vulnerability scanning and having consistent vulnerability scans, we call it threat hunting, right? There's a threat hunting component where we're out proactively hunting for threats that are sitting on the network or vulnerabilities, right? But pen testing, it's good, but it's good for that moment. And it might be a good door opening utility, right?
I just want to piggyback on this real fast. So, what's your name? Saad?
Yeah, just another
Yeah.
engineer on the Bridgepoint team.
Awesome. Yeah. So great question. I actually think the question that I would go back to the customer with is, what's the objective? Like, what are you trying to achieve? You know, if you're trying to achieve defensibility, if you're trying to achieve where you can show the state of the organization or build a plan with a roadmap, if you want to go talk to the board or the executive team to say, this is where we are and this is where we need to get to, then yeah, gap assess it up. But if your objective is, how do I prevent ransomware? How do I keep this from happening to me again? It's a little bit of a different story. And at TPX, what we do is we actually have a ransomware evaluation that's free. We'll sit down with any of your customers, and we'll spend time just doing an evaluation to the 12 best practices, top 12 best practices associated with ransomware, to give them visibility to what their threat is at a high level. And that helps start the question about strategy.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nooch, go. Do we get?
Thanks, Mike. And my question is specific to Jazz, if you don't mind. You work in a space that I'm very passionate about, you know, moving services to the cloud, network and security to the cloud. And I've always talked about there's two sales involved there because it's a fundamental paradigm shift for the people you're talking to that are managing boxes and devices and integrated tools. One, are you finding the same thing, that there's a staged approach to how you engage? And then secondly, you know, how are you having that conversation to get them comfortable that what they're doing is beneficial to move to the cloud?
Can you hear me? Okay. What is the question? I absolutely agree with every single word you say, but what's the question?
The question again is in two parts. You know, one, are you finding that the first phase of the conversation is a fundamental paradigm shift, getting them comfortable with the notion that all these boxes, all these devices, all these tools, boxes that are on their prem, is achievable in the cloud, and then the secondary conversation is making them comfortable of the benefit of doing that? Are you finding that those two things are how you're going about them?
Yeah, so security is never really stand alone. That first thing I always ask them is exactly why you try to secure. Then let's find the right solution, right? So I think I will comment about that. It's never really about the box. So vendor really need to hide the complexity from customers, right? So there are certain circumstances that it makes sense. You have the appliance sitting in your office. There are certain circumstances that need to be in the cloud. For example, for your remote worker, they are traveling around. So if you want to have a secure web gateway to make sure, you know, protect them from the threat coming from internet, it doesn't make sense for them for vendor to reroute the traffic back to your office and go out to internet. In that sense, that the security solution need to be in the cloud. So as a vendor, is it our responsibility how to hide the complexity from customers? So we will make the best choice on behalf of customers, but without compromising the feature and performance they need. Does that help? Do I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Eric's running.
Do we have time for one more?
One more. We got one more.
Okay, common thread.
Hold
right?
on. Are we getting? You guys choose. Are you guys going to fight over it? All right, we're going to give it to Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Hey, I think we all can agree that a network's going to get breached one day.
Amen.
Right? So I'd love to hear your opinions about monetizing that to the client from a standpoint of what they could lose, or I love that entirety slide when they show the different levels. Everyone would love to be a 5, right? And they're going to spend a lot of money to get to that level. So kind of both directions on the monetization, right? How much they're going to lose as a company, but how much would they gain in revenue if the breach didn't happen?
Well, I'll start on this. This is a great question, and certainly for more mature organizations, they really want to know, what's it cost us to have a breach? What's going to be the dollars that it affects? When you talk about an outage, you know, the organization should be able to say what an hour of downtime costs.
Right.
And calculating that, and it's well established that if you are ransomed, the amount of time that it will take to restore is in weeks to get back to full restoration. Yeah. So you can easily compute this going to the average amount of time associated with restoration from a ransomware attack. But the other side of it is the continued, it's kind of like COVID, where there's like some lingering issues that continue. You have continued costs to your business beyond just the operational. You got the reputational risk that incurs. You've got the legal side of it, because if you actually lose data, now if you pay, you don't actually lose it, which then that goes against that piece. But you can actually get across away from just looking at just the immediate downtime loss, but you got the other side of it, which is the continued effect to the business.
Take a look at your Wi-Fi on your phone. Ojai Valley Inn, they got a wide open printer.
Right.
They do. I noticed that a little bit earlier.
It's a good thing I was printing on earlier. Is that okay, Kevin? All right. You guys, we're out of time. I want to thank you guys all. It was a great conversation.
Great question.
They're here all day. Go get them, talk to them, pick their mind. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.